Okay, so you're very welcome to the fifth and final week of the Art of Reflection course. So this is our last week, I'm afraid. And well done for coming back for week 5, because it's always easy to miss the week when there's been a week gap, but it's nice to see you all again. So what we're going to do tonight, I'll just share my screen with you so you can see what we'll be doing tonight. So we'll start with the recap of last week as usual. Oh, this is slightly out of sequence. Tonight we're going to be doing two things. We're going to be contemplating reality and at least in some of its majesty. And we're also going to be looking then after the break at reflecting upon the wise and indeed reflecting on the Buddha. And reflecting on reality, reflecting on the Buddha really are the themes for tonight. And even though it's the last week of the course, there will be some home practice. I won't be checking up on it again. You'll just have to do it yourself in the meantime. We'll come back to the recap of last week 2 weeks ago in a moment. But for now, let's just set ourselves up and we'll do a short meditation just to arrive. So we'll do a short exercise just to settle in and be here. So taking the time then just to set ourselves up, so we don't have to be sitting in full meditation posture, but we can at least be sitting upright and reasonably alert. And we'll just do a short meditation to arrive. So when you're ready, closing your eyes and just having a sense of your surroundings, first of all. The sounds of the birds outside, the traffic. Any sounds within the room, your computer sounds, whatever other sounds are there. And tuning into yourself then a bit more fully. Noticing where your physical experience of the body is most vivid. Maybe it's in your stomach. Maybe it's the ache in your head. Maybe it's your feet in contact with the floor. Just noticing where's most vivid. What is the most vivid experience you're having in the body right now? And if you are in your head, maybe bringing your awareness or softening that down into the rest of the body. Or if it's unpleasant, just trying not to add to it. Just allowing it to ease, unbind in awareness. Becoming aware of the breath in the body. Each breath in, each breath out. Noticing the movement of the body as we breathe. And taking a couple of deeper breaths down into the belly now. And then relaxing the breath again to be natural. And opening to the heart, opening to whatever ongoing emotions are there, allowing them in. We can breathe with these if they're intense. Noticing any persistent thinking that we're getting stuck to. And seeing if we can just let it be without getting caught up in it. And then broadening out once more to take in the sense of the room, the sounds, you being in this place with these objects and walls around you. When you're ready, just beginning to open your eyes, bring the practice to a close. And coming out in your own time. Okay, so just to remind you, welcome, by the way, if you just arrived during that session. So just to remind you of what we did last week then. To remind you of what we did last week. So last week, 2 weeks ago, we were looking at reflective and slow reading. And in particular, we were talking about how to read Buddhist texts well. So you don't read Buddhist texts like you would a novel or a regular newspaper or something like that. So reading Buddhist text requires a certain kind of way of, preparing your mind, you might say, making sure that you have spaciousness, making sure that you read it well, and looking for quality over quantity. And we had some of the Buddhist texts, and I gave you out some samples, and I sent you. I think there was also poems from previous week you could read, but I think it was the Buddhist texts really that I wanted you to focus on. And we did hear a few of them, like there was the story of Kisagotami, whose child had died, and I read that slowly. And we're looking at verses from the Dhammapada as well about experiences are preceded by mind, led by mind, produced by mind. And there's a few other bits of text in there as well that you could have read and studied or turned over in your mind. And really, the whole idea is to live with the text, have it percolating away. So that's what we did last time. And then the home practice was to, if you get the time, to read chapter 4 of the book, which is on reflective reading. And then just find a Buddhist text and dwell upon it. So that could have been one of the ones which I gave you last week or last time, or it might be one of your own as well. Maybe you have a Buddhist text that you wanted to read as well, or a Buddhist inspired text. And doing all this, bearing in mind the pointers. So there's various pointers made about reading it slowly, making sure you have confidence in what's been said, good mental states, that kind of thing. And then I was encouraging people to share how they got on in Slack. Okay, so that's what we looked at last week. So hopefully you had a chance to read over some of the texts. So why don't we go into groups for about 12 minutes now? So Stephen, if you could, are you ready to go? Okay, off you go then. So we'll see you back here in 12 minutes then. So Stephen will pop up. I think your invitation should be up now. If you want to join your groups, we might have to merge one or two of the groups. We'll see what happens with the numbers. Okay, great. So you're all very welcome back from the groups. I hope they went well. I'm kind of curious if people connected with any particular text. So a couple of people were talking about the mind reactive and creative text in the list of texts in our group, and one person was the the Dhammapada verses, experiences are preceded by mind, led by mind. So you could if you wanted to put in the chat, let me know if there's any particular text you resonated with. That would be really interesting to me. And Louise has just put a link there for audio teaching. So that's a site. I'll send that out later on with the whole. It's a website with lots and lots of Buddhist talks that you can go and listen to as well. So I'll send it out later. I'm also going to send you out the link to the full lecture of that mind reactive and creative was taken from, because we were talking about it a bit in our group. So I'll send that out too. And Sam liked Life is King. Yeah, that's a great poem as well. Okay, so feel free to do that in the chat if you want. I'm going to move on because we're going to do a few more reflections tonight. So in the first half of the night, I wanted to focus on reflecting upon reality. And the main thing, let me just get my slideshow set up here again. So the main thing about one of the main ways of reflecting upon reality in Buddhism is to reflect that all things change. Yeah, so it's a really central teaching in Buddhism, the teaching of impermanence, that all things change. And we've probably all heard this already. More technically, all things of the world are impermanent. In fact, these were the Buddha's last words. All worldly things are impermanent. With mindfulness, or ethical vigilance is another translation, strive on, basically, for freedom. So everything in the universe changes. We change, our bodies change, our emotions change, our thoughts change. It's not just that. Obviously, this includes the fact that we're all going to die, and that's what people often jump to very quickly when you talk about impermanence. But it also means the positive sides of things. So things do end, but new things come into life all the time. Autumn and winter come along, and then spring and summer come along. So we're at the height of summer right now, and things are looking beautiful everywhere now. In the sun. So it's important to remember that reflecting on change includes beginnings as well as endings. So if you're of a melancholic or depressive disposition, it might be good to reflect more upon beginnings And if some of us, Buddhism would call us eternalists, we think nothing ever is going to end. It might be good to reflect upon endings. So I'm a bit of an eternalist. I kind of think that I'll just go on forever and nothing will ever end, really. And it would be good for me to reflect more on endings, for example. So do it in a way that shows an awareness of your temperamental bias, whether you're pessimistic or optimistic, or whether you're, in Buddhism we call it eternalist or nihilist. Yeah. But anyways, all that's included in reflecting upon change. And a couple of main things to say about reflecting on a reflection like this, like I've been saying throughout the course, just keep it really, really simple. Keep it really, really simple. You don't have to reflect upon the ending of the universe or the Big Bang or how everyone changes all the time, at the biggest possible scale. Often when I'm doing reflection on change, it's simply watching how the breath changes, or it's seeing how my emotions arise and pass away and change and flow, and they never stay the same. That's reflection, or thoughts are like that. Thoughts never stay the same. So you just keep it really, really simple. And the idea is that when you keep it simple, you just build up an ability to notice change in small things, and then that percolates out into the bigger things in your life. And the second last thing I'll say is just to notice your responses. Like in all reflection that we've done on the course, notice your responses in body and mind. So notice if you get tight, notice if you feel relaxing going on in the body, notice your energy, notice your mental proliferation. If you start to get really heady and fast-paced, you might want to back off a bit or do it in a different way. Notice your emotional responses. You might feel sad. I often feel sad sometimes when I start reflecting on change, because I have to let go of things a bit more, which is how life really is. You have to let go. And at the same time, I feel sad because part of me doesn't want to do that. You might feel grief. You might feel joy. You might feel freedom. So paying attention to all the different things that arise and pass away, and remember that they too are impermanent as well. Yeah. And particularly notice any resistances. You might just want to try and keep it at arm's length and freeze up. Or another way of resisting is you might just feel really sleepy and you might start falling asleep, or you might go vague. And that's a very natural way. It's a very natural thing to happen when you're reflecting on impermanence. And then the other thing is cultivate calm. And I should probably say positivity as well. So I remember I've heard in one place that insight contemplation like this, you do it in homeopathic doses, so you do it in very small doses, and the rest of the time then you spend cultivating mindfulness, cultivating loving kindness, cultivating positivity, cultivating calm. And the small bits of insight that you do then kind of perfume or percolate the rest of those practices as well. So make sure you're positive and calm. And if you find that if your mind is just too jagged or too worked up or too upset to really do reflection like this on impermanence, well, just go back and do a calming practice instead, like follow the breath or cultivate loving kindness. So there are a few pointers. I'm not going to say much more about that right now, because I think it would be best if we just did it. So why don't we set ourselves up and again, just sitting comfortably, and we're going to do this for about 10-12 minutes or so. And we're going to do two reflections, actually, one after another. We'll have a little kind of, if we need to move in the middle of them, there'll be a 2-minute kind of, or a 1-minute break where you can move if you need to. So the whole idea of what we're doing is we're just seeing change. We're not trying to do anything with the change. We're just trying to see things changing in our experience. Yeah? So firstly, let's just settle in again to our posture, to being comfortable, to being at ease. taking in our surroundings so that we can then, without surprise or shock, go inwards a little more. Tuning into the body, the contact points perhaps of the body with the floor, the chair, cushions. Allowing the chair to support your weight a little more, letting go into that. And then allowing an awareness of the breath to emerge. Breath at its own pace, without grabbing it or forcing it. And you're allowing the breath to just be the breath. The breath is also the body moving and breathing. The expansion of the rib cage. Contraction again. The swelling of the abdomen downwards into the belly. The diaphragm, I should say, down into the belly. The movement of the abdomen. And establishing ourselves on the breath, with the breath, in the breath in the body. And now we can start to notice how each breath is subtly different. Each in-breath is a fresh arising of the breath, something new that we haven't really experienced before. And each out-breath is the expiry of that breath, is the ending of that breath, the falling away of the breath. You could begin by just focusing on the in-breath if you wish, or the out-breath, or you can be aware of both. Arisings, passings away. Each breath arises anew, and then is gone forever with the exhalation. And no two in-breaths arise in exactly the same way. Each one is unique. And no two out-breaths are the same. The breath is evolving and constantly changing as it comes in, as it goes out. And we don't need to make it any more complicated than that. So just spending a few moments now noticing the arising and passing away of the breath. And if you find your mind is just a bit too distracted to do this, you can just relax into the breath itself without worrying about reflecting upon it. And being open as well and breathing with any emotional responses to the reflection, through noticing change in the breath. And now letting go of the breath altogether and just sitting for a few moments. Just letting the mind do whatever it wants to do as we absorb the practice, letting go of the reflection. And then just giving yourself a break for a moment or two before we do the second reflection practice. You can stay in posture if you wish, or it might be no bad thing just to move a little bit to break it up so you don't get stuck in the old way. So with the second reflection, we're going to continue reflecting upon impermanence, but we're going to do it just in a more free form way, because with the breath, it can be quite nice to see the change of the breath, but it can sometimes get a bit tight around the breath. So we're going to, this time, we're going to use the breath to bring us in, and then we'll let go of the breath, or you can have it loosely in the background as an anchor. And we're just going to notice change in our body, in our emotions, in our thoughts, in our energy, and just see how things arise and pass away. So I'll talk us through that. So it is a bit more free form, and often people find this easier to do than the first one, but sometimes it's a bit less structured, and people appreciate structure as well. So a bit less structured, this one. So why don't we set ourselves up again? And again, it's good when you're ready to close your eyes. So closing your eyes and just allowing the breath to emerge again in the body. Really good that it's in the body. We'll just spend a couple of minutes just tuning in again with the breath. And now we can let go of the breath, or we can just let it go quietly into the background. And just noticing what you feel in your body. You might feel itches. You might notice gurgles in your guts. It's really about noticing as much as feeling. Noticing what's pleasant, what's unpleasant. Noticing energy movements, emotions, maybe emotions in the stomach and the heart and the throat, thoughts. So you're not trying to notice all these things, just focusing on what's obvious or what's clear or what kind of comes into awareness, and staying with that and watching how it doesn't stay the same. And if it dissolves away or drifts out of your awareness, just allowing something else to come into your awareness and noticing the impermanence of that, how that changes too. And the act of bringing awareness to these things will in itself change them as well. So staying with them as they evolve, as they change. Indeed, can you find anything that does not change? This can be sensations in the body, like a tightness in your abdomen or pain in your shoulder, or it could be emotions in the heart, feelings of happiness or joy or sadness, or thoughts. If it is thoughts, not getting caught up in the story of the thoughts, just noticing how they always change. If you are getting lost in thoughts, maybe just come back to something more physical to look at. So is there anything fixed in the body, in our emotions, in our energy, in our thoughts? Anything that doesn't evolve and change, particularly when we bring awareness to it? What response does this evoke in us? What emotional response, if any? Can we remain with the ever-changing nature of phenomena, ever-changing nature of experience, ever-flowing? And when we're ready, then just letting go of the practice and just sitting for a few moments. And just noticing any effect that the two practices have had on you. Noticing how you're feeling as we just sit. And just noting anything you want to take away from the practice for yourself. And bringing the practice to a close then. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes again. Okay, so that was a bit of reflection. I hope you found that fruitful. You can ask questions if you want in the chat. We're going to take a break now in a moment, and or you can mention it again in your groups at the end. So there are two ways of looking at impermanence or practicing reflection on impermanence in a kind of a meditative context. I would call that a bit more like contemplation there than reflection, but you can reflect in other ways, obviously, as well, as we've seen on the course. So after the tea break, we will look at the Buddha a bit more and reflecting upon the whys. So we'll do that. We'll do something a little bit differently after the tea break. So let's be back ready to go just after, maybe around 6 or 7 minutes past 8. So that'll be a 10-minute break. So, and if you want to, you can type in any questions in the chat in the meantime. So see you back here around 6 or 7 minutes past 8, ready to go. So just a little reminder that as usual, the course is done on a donation basis. So I'll remind you in the email about that, and that you can give a donation if you want to the centre. We're almost entirely dependent upon donations at the moment, so your donations are very welcome. Stephen's just put the link in there as well. Let's see, is there anything else? Brendan just mentioned that death seems to loom very large when reflecting on change. It does tend to jump up. And I see other people nodding there as well. So if you find that that's, it's no bad thing to reflect upon death on the whole, but the problem is it tends to freak us out quite a lot. And I would say to not go near it unless you're in quite positive states of mind. Otherwise, it might just make you really anxious and really unhappy. And Buddhism is not about making you anxious and unhappy, okay? Just be really clear about that. So what you could reflect upon instead is just, something as simple as the breath without reading too much more into it, or something like how new things are constantly arising. Newness, everything is springing into being, new things are happening. You could focus in your body on how new experiences, new sensations are constantly emerging. So you can't hold on to the old ones. Maybe that would be a better way to do it. The other thing, if you find that, is I think this is a bit coming in from the side, but appreciation is a really good one as well. Gratitude and appreciation. I have a friend who, whenever she was trying to reflect upon death, got very unhappy about it. And she just worked on cultivating gratitude for what she had, like a gratitude journal and things like that. And it made a huge difference to her. So very common response, what Brendan and others are describing there, yeah. Okay, so let's move on, because I want to do, if we get time, I want to do 3 different reflections, okay? So the second half of the night is looking at the qualities of the wise and imagining the Buddha. So I wanted you to think firstly on 3 different questions, okay? And if I was doing this in the class context in person and with a bit more time, I'd hear more back from you, but we'll do what we can anyway. So I'm going to share the questions on screen. So the first question is, I want you to reflect upon, and feel free to put it in the chat if you want as well. What qualities would you say that people who are wise would possess? So what qualities would you say that people who are wise possess? Yeah. So when you think of the qualities of the wise, what are those qualities? So you can put them in the chat, or you can just reflect upon it yourself. I'll give us a moment or two to do that. So a few are coming in there: non-judgment, calmness, openness, patience, calmness again, acceptance. These are all qualities of wise people. I don't necessarily mean just Buddhist wise either, as in wise from the Buddhist perspective. Slow to conclude or shut down possibility. Good. Yeah. Thanks, Rohanna. Okay, so the next question, and you can keep typing in if you're putting something in. Brendan says a listening quality. That's good. Yeah. Can you think? Declan says they don't rush in. So the next question is: can you think of a person who you consider to be wise? So it could be someone in your life, or even a fictional character in a film or a novel. And just spend a few moments reflecting on how they are wise, bringing them to mind. Don't just think about them, but try and feel into what is it that you're responding to in them. What is those qualities in them? What might it be like to be someone like this? Just bring them to mind as vividly as you can, and their qualities that you consider wise. Great. So more things coming in. Rosie was saying qualities of the wise: intelligence through experience. Declan's commenting on his grandfather being wise. Rohanna's saying very self-aware and able to take that into consideration when thinking things through. Okay, good. So hopefully you can bring to mind a person who's wise. And then this sets us up for the last question. Oh, here's some more. David says lives within a set of non-rational boundaries. And Valerie says able to evolve and change through experience. Yeah, they're great. Thank you. And then the last question is, what effect does it have on you yourself to reflect like this? What effect does it have? How do you feel right now? Do you feel any different? Do you feel more in touch or less in touch with those qualities yourself? Rohanna wants to be wise. That's great. That's the starting point of wisdom, wanting to be wise. So what effect does this have on you, bringing the qualities of the wise to mind? So some lovely messages coming in there. People, Valerie saying more free and the prospect of learning more and more. Caroline says it wants to make her develop and nurture those qualities in herself. Sam talks about how he has a desire to be detached from worldly concerns and aligned with something higher. Steph, the person inspires her to be wise one day. Hopefully, I'm sure it will, Steph. Brendan says he feels like he has a long way to go, but that's in a way no bad thing either, that, we have something to grow into. So I hope you kind of got, hopefully, the point through doing the reflection, that by reflecting upon the wise, we can ourselves become more wise in a way, or activate those qualities in ourselves a little bit more. And this is one of the main reasons why in the Buddhist tradition we bring the Buddha to mind. We bring the Buddha to mind to put ourselves in touch with those qualities. So the Buddha was a human being, just like you or I, who through his own efforts gained enlightenment 2,500 years ago. He wasn't a god. He didn't do anything that we couldn't do as well. And one of the lovely things I like about Buddhism is that you can reflect upon the Buddha and feel more connected to the Buddha, and feel that the qualities of the Buddha are more activated in you then. And that's why we bring the Buddha to mind. Well, one of the main reasons we bring the Buddha to mind. So, it's a very traditional practice in Buddhism, and indeed in lots of schools of religion and philosophy, to reflect upon the wise and bring the wise to mind, and emulate how the wise would copy or emulate how the wise would behave. In a way, that's what we're doing with ethics, Buddhist ethics. We're copying how a really enlightened person would behave, so that we become more enlightened ourselves. Yeah. So the traditional practice in Buddhism is called Buddhanusati. And Anusati means recollection, remembrance, bringing to mind, keeping in mind. And Buddha is, the Buddha. So Buddhanusati is bringing to mind the Buddha, keeping the Buddha in your mind. And it's a very traditional practice right back to the Buddha's time. There's one of the texts you might have read from 2 weeks ago was the story of Pingia, who says, I see him with my mind as clearly as with my eye. So he's always reflecting upon the Buddha and bringing the Buddha to mind. And as a result, at the end of the text, if you believe it, the Buddha appears to him in a vision, and he says, "You've gained insight through doing this. Basically, you've gained enlightenment through reflecting so intensely upon the Buddha." So it's a very valid path of practice that goes right back to the Buddha. So for the rest of the evening, we're going to just explore 2 different ways of doing this. One a bit more conceptually, and another a bit more non-conceptually. Yeah. So the first one is, I want to read a very old Buddhist text called the Purabheda Sutta. And this is a text where the Buddha is talking about what the qualities of someone who is enlightened are, what the qualities of someone who has gained enlightenment is. It's a very, very old Buddhist text, and he's talking about the Buddha himself, but he could be talking about any enlightened being, but he's talking about the Buddha. Now, the pronouns are all he and him, so if you can excuse that and not let that create too much noise for you, it's true of anyone, obviously. That's the translation I have. I could probably have changed that, but anyways, here we go. So I'll just read this out if you want to just have a listen. And I'll read it out again in a few minutes, and we'll do a reflection on it again. But just have a listen for now. This is the Buddha talking about the qualities of the Buddha, talking about the qualities of an enlightened being, talking about the qualities that we would have if we were enlightened. He has no anger, no fear, and no pride. Nothing disturbs his composure. Nothing gives him cause for regret. He is a wise man who is restrained in speech. He does not conceal anything, and there is nothing he holds on to. Without acquisitiveness or envy, he remains unobtrusive. He has no disdain or insult for anyone. He is not a man who is full of himself, or a man who is addicted to pleasure. He is someone who is gentle and alert, with no blind faith. He shows no aversion to anything. He is not a person who works because he wants something. If he gets nothing at all, he remains unperturbed. There is no craving to build up the passion, to taste new pleasures. His mindfulness holds him poised in a constant even-mindedness, where arrogance is impossible. He makes no comparisons with the rest of the world as superior, inferior, or equal. Because he understands the way things are, he is free from dependency, and there is nothing he relies on. For him, there is no craving to exist or not to exist. This is what I call a man who is calmed. It is someone who does not seek after pleasure, who has nothing to tie him down, who has gone beyond the pull of attachment. It is a man without sons, a man without wealth, a man with nothing in him that he grasps at as his, and nothing in him that he rejects as not his. He receives false criticisms from other people, but remains undisturbed and unmoved by their words. Okay, so just to make one or two comments about that, and then we'll hear it again in a reflection form. So there's quite a few qualities there, and some of them do need a bit of unpacking because they're a bit more technical. Yeah, but I'm sure that like no more craving to exist or craving to not exist. They're seen as deep drives within the human psyche in Buddhism, and one has to let go of them to really experience the full freedom. Anyways, they're more technical, but there are ones there that could be instantly related to. Like the one that really jumps out at me is that, you know, he says he makes no comparisons with the rest of the world as superior, inferior, or equal. So you could imagine what it would be like to never compare yourself to another person ever again. And Buddhism says that would be a good thing to do, to never, ever compare yourself again. And actually, you know, there's no reason to compare yourself in Buddhism. You know, you can admire people's qualities and want to develop them more in yourself. I have a different thing here. It's more like they're better than me, or I'm better than them, or we're about the same. Because whenever you do any of those three, you put yourself or the other person, or probably both, in a certain type of box that's actually painful. Yeah. So imagine now doing that every day. You know, that's what reflecting on the Buddha means. Reflecting upon what it would be like to never do that. The other ones that jump out is imagine relating to nothing as being yours and nothing as being not yours. Yeah. So, you know, I'm here in my room surrounded by all this stuff. And I can just imagine, I'm not there yet now, by the way, but imagine just being able to look around you and go, I'm not attached to any of this stuff. You know, I'm happy to use it. I appreciate it. But if it goes, you know, if there's a big flood tomorrow and it gets washed away, I won't be too upset about it. I'm not attached to it. It's not mine. It's not mine. You know, I just don't think in those terms anymore. So imagine being able to think like that. The last line, he says, he receives false criticisms from other people, but remains undisturbed by their words and unmoved by their words. So imagine being able to be completely calm in the face of someone unfairly criticizing you and not taking it in any way personally. So they're just three examples from that jump out at me. And there's loads of other texts that you can read as well about the Buddha. And another quality that isn't quite mentioned there, but is the Buddha's love. You know, he's great compassion and love. And there's the story of Ananda, who, as the Buddha was dying, Ananda was his attendant for, you know, 30 years at that point or something like that, or 20 years. And they were very good friends. Ananda was his personal attendant. And of all the qualities that Ananda was going to miss the most, as he stood weeping about the Buddha dying, he said it was the Buddha who was so kind to him. So it was the Buddha's kindness that jumped out at him. So that's another way of reflecting upon the Buddha, and we'll probably draw that out a little bit more in the non-conceptual contemplation we'll do in minutes as well. Yeah. So lots of qualities there. So let's see, anything else I want to say? Oh, the other thing as well then, and maybe this touches into Brendan's comment about having a long way to go. The other thing we don't do when we're reflecting upon the Buddha is we say, oh, they're so great and we're so crap. You know what I mean? Watch out for that. We're not trying to get into that at all. It's purely wow, being open to those qualities and therefore wanting to develop them more in ourselves. And even a sense of longing. Sometimes I long to be less attached to things and long to be freer, you know? And I think Sam mentioned it there, a desire to be detached from worldly concerns. So longing is quite good in Buddhism in a way. If it's a healthy type of longing, not if you're longing for another sugar hit, you know? Your longing for freedom is no bad thing, yeah? Okay, I think I've said all I need to say. So why don't I'll just read it again a bit slowly, And and then I'll give you a few minutes at the end just to, maybe there's just one quality you want to pick out and reflect upon. And I'll give you a few minutes to reflect upon that. Yeah. One quality. What would it be like if you could be more like that? Yeah. Or really, wouldn't it be lovely? Or even just imagining that quality in you, imagining never comparing yourself and just seeing if you can activate that a bit more in yourself. Okay, so here we go. He has no anger, no fear, or no pride. Nothing disturbs his composure, and nothing gives him cause for regret. He is a wise man who is restrained in speech. He does not conceal anything, and there is nothing he holds on to. Without acquisitiveness or envy, he remains unobtrusive. He has no disdain or insult for anyone. He is not a man who is full of himself or who is addicted to pleasure. He is a man who is gentle and alert with no blind faith. He shows no aversion to anything. He is not a person who works because he wants something. If he gets nothing at all, he remains unperturbed. There is no craving to build up the passion to taste new pleasures. His mindfulness holds him poised in a constant even-mindedness where arrogance is impossible. He makes no comparisons with the rest of the world as superior, inferior, or equal. Because he understands the way things are, he is free from dependency, and there is nothing he relies on. For him, there is no craving to exist and not to exist. This is what I call a man who is calmed. It is a man who does not seek after pleasure, who has nothing to tie him down, who has gone beyond the pull of attachment. It is a man without sons, a man without wealth, a man with nothing in him that he grasps at as his, and nothing in him that he rejects as not his. He is a man who receives false criticisms from other people, but who remains undisturbed and unmoved by their words. So we want to pick one quality and imagine that in ourselves for the next few minutes. Reflect upon what it would feel like. And then letting go of the practice and just sitting for a moment or two. Just tuning into how you feel after doing that. When you're ready, you can start to come out of the practice. And you can put a word or two. You could put a word or two in the chat if you wanted or not. It's up to you. If there's any particular quality that struck you or anything that struck you from that. Okay, some good comments coming in there. Okay, so David enjoyed it. That's great, delight. Steph was saying that she aspires to be more like the traits in the text. Great, that's the reflection going well then. Not that it goes badly necessarily. Sam was reflecting on seeking out pleasure, finding it difficult to divorce the concept of pleasure from that of passion and wondering about the implications. And Valerie saying something similar. I reflect on not having cravings, but I like to eat tasty things because I'm human. I feel confused. Okay, so it's probably worth saying that, again, this is what I meant when some of it does need unpacking, that Buddhism talks about two different types of desire. It talks about desire for worldly things and desire for spiritual growth and development and enlightenment, basically. And desires for the spiritual path are good. You know, they're good desires. Not all desires are bad in Buddhism. And there's nothing wrong then in terms of worldly desires. There's nothing wrong with worldly desires about enjoying a nice meal or having pleasure or even feeling passion, as long as it's passion for something skillful rather than unskillful. You know, passion, being a passionate serial killer would not be a good thing, you know, whereas being passionate about meditation or passionate about reading Dharma books would be a really good thing. So passion is really good. And I think maybe this is one of the things in the West that Buddhism often gets misinterpreted as it gets kind of defanged or something into just mere calmness. And I don't think that that's Buddhism. I think that we should actually be quite passionate about things. We should discover where our energy wants to go to and use that energy. You know, we need more energy, actually, not less. So we should be really passionate about really positive things. It's just a matter of finding where your passions are and trying to move them over time onto something more and more healthy and more creative and more dharmic, I guess is the word. So I hope that answers at least, I mean, we could do a whole course in this really. So it's fine to enjoy things. What the Buddha is talking about here in terms of going beyond, I can't remember the exact phrase now, going, you know, doesn't feel any craving. I think what he's talking about there is the kind of craving where we think that if we just eat this thing, we will be happy. If we just have this experience, we will be happy. This will solve all our problems. And I think we do this with food. We do this with relationships. We do this with all kinds of things, money and so on. So that's the kind of craving the Buddha is talking about. And it's very clear in the Buddhist texts that, the Buddha really appreciated things. In the very last text before he died, he was walking around this particular place near Vaishali, which is modern day, I can't remember the name of it now, but he's just really appreciating the beauty of the place. And he says to Ananda, who's with him, isn't this really, really beautiful? So you get the sense they really appreciated things. So it's not about becoming a completely bland individual with no desires. Yeah. Okay, Miriam, no aversion to anything. So aversion is where you actively hate things or dislike things. Now a Buddha would feel like, I don't want to do things that are unskillful. So that's a bit different again to aversion. Aversion is kind of a hatred of subtle or gross form. And Anne found it very liberating. That's great. Okay, so we're going to do one more reflection. We're doing a lot of reflections tonight, but I think it's good. And this one is it's where we imagine ourselves with the Buddha. And this again is a very traditional use of reflection. You could say it's more of a contemplation where we're imagining ourselves literally sitting with the Buddha. And it's a different kind of language. We're using not conceptual language, but the language of symbols and imagery. And it's not the rational parts of the brain and the heart that have been used here. So, you could say thinking about something is like, the difference in thinking about something and actually contemplating, like being there with it. It's like the difference between driving in a car and looking at the countryside and stopping the car and getting out to walk in the countryside. So we're going to stop the car now and get out and walk with the Buddha, or sit with the Buddha more accurately. And we're using our imagination here. So we're going to imagine everything dissolving away into the blue sky. And then we're going to imagine in various stages the Buddha appearing before us and us sitting with the Buddha. So I don't want you just to think about it as like just this little thing that's going on in your head. I want you to imagine that you're actually there, like you're here in your room right now. Yeah. And we'll do that with our eyes closed, because it's just easier to do it that way. And it's another way of accessing these deeper parts of ourselves. So you could argue that it's as real as sitting in your room. You're using the language of symbols and myth and archetype to access something much deeper in the universe, in your mind. Okay, so why don't we get comfortable once more for our final reflection of the course. Closing our eyes, allowing all concerns to drop away as best as we can, including concerns about how to do the practice. Just letting it all go, if we can. And allowing everything around us to dissolve into clear blue sky. A vast expanse of clear blue sky in all directions. Everything just dissolves into that blue sky. And we find ourselves seated in the blue sky. In all directions of space, there is deep blue in front and behind, to our left and our right, above and below, and in all other directions. And we see a flat, grassy plain appear in front of us. And we are seated on this grassy plain. Deep, vibrant green grass. And in the distance, in the far distance, are snow-capped mountain peaks. And in front of us, a couple of meters in front of us, or 2 or 3 meters, sprouts a Bodhi tree, a tree of awakening, the kind of tree under which the Buddha gained enlightenment 2,500 years ago. And it quickly grows to become a huge silver trunked tree with wide-reaching branches that extend over our heads and dark green heart-shaped leaves. We're seated underneath the canopy, looking at the trunk, looking at the bark. And in front of the trunk, in front of us as well, between us and the trunk, is a pile of grass piled up to form a seat, a meditation seat. And on the pile of grass is a white, pure white cloth. And if we can't see much, at least we can have a feeling for the imagery used, a feeling for what's going on. It doesn't have to be very visual. And then seated on the white cloth is the Buddha. The Buddha Shakyamuni, who gained enlightenment, who set Buddhism in motion. And he's sitting cross-legged in meditation, wearing the saffron-colored robes of a monk, with one shoulder uncovered. And his hands rest on his lap, one on top of the other. And in his hands is a large black begging bowl. And his hair is blue-black and curly. And he is smiling serenely, eyes half closed. And he sees us and takes us in and is delighted to see us. And we feel welcomed by him, welcomed by a sense of deep kindness. And the figure of the Buddha, it's as if he's surrounded by an aura of golden light. This golden light we can feel gives off a sense of profound peacefulness and an infinite compassion. And the golden light of the Buddha extends out to take us in as well. The light permeates us. and it purifies us of all our shortcomings and all our regrets. They dissolve in the golden light of the Buddha. And slowly the Buddha, the tree, the grass, the mountains all dissolve into the clear blue sky again. And the golden light, it can be absorbed into our heart and remain there if we wish. And then the clear blue sky dissolves away. It fades, and we just sit for a few moments, letting go of any effort. And if we want, we can just notice how we feel now after having done that as we just sit. And when we're ready, then we can bring the practice to a close and open our eyes again. Okay, so that was our last reflection. So that was a different way of reflecting upon the qualities of the Buddha. So hopefully you found that of use. I do enjoy those practices. And again, that's a very traditional way of activating, you could say, of bringing the Buddha to mind, of having a feel for what enlightenment is like, the goal of the path, and even activating it a bit more in ourselves. So it's a lovely practice to do. Okay, so it's a little bit of a jump, but I just wanted to talk about the home practice. Hopefully that isn't too jarring after the reflection. So there is home practice, even though this is the last week. So what I'd really like you to do is to continue reading the book. Do finish the book. This week it's chapter 5, I think. But anyways, if you haven't read the book, or if you haven't finished it yet, continue on. And do get the book if you have read it. And, you know, there's so much material in this book that you could read it again and again. So don't be afraid to do that either. And then continue to give yourself time doing nothing each day and reflecting if you can. Definitely try and make that just part of your existence as much as brushing your teeth is and eating your lunches, you know. When we need that as much as we need our teeth cleaned and our food ingested. Yeah. Reflect upon impermanence in a way that's helpful to you. If that resonated with you earlier, bring the Buddha to mind. You could do the qualities again there, or you could do a kind of a reflection, or just think about what it would be like to be free of delusion, free of hatred, free of envy, those kinds of things. And then lastly, decide how you want to decide what you want to do next, basically. Do you want to have reflection as a more regular part of your life now that we've done this course in it. And just be conscious about that. Just be conscious about that. Yeah. So I'll put those in the chat now. And what we'll do now is we'll go into one final group where, let me just put that in the chat. We'll go into one final group for 5 minutes, Stephen. Sorry, it's a little short. And just say maybe one thing you want to take away or do or remember from the course, and maybe how you're going to remember to do that. Yeah. So, or anything else you want to talk about. We'll have about a minute. While we're just waiting, just to say that the centre doesn't have actually any courses scheduled just yet. We're working on it this weekend. So after this weekend, we'll be able to tell you if you want to do any more courses, what you can do next. I'll email you all an email tomorrow morning with the video, and you can sign up for our mailing list as well if you want in that email, and that'll keep you informed of all the upcoming events that will be happening. Okay, so that's it for the course. I've really enjoyed it. I really want to thank the team for doing all the leading groups and everything, and Stephen for doing all the tech stuff, which is not an easy job. So thank you, Stephen. And it was very, very nice to meet you all. And I hope we'll all meet again sometime. Keep reflecting and keep practicing the Dharma. And maybe we'll meet one day on retreat in person or in the Dublin Buddhist Centre, or certainly online again for another course. Yeah, and best of luck with it all.